I suppose looking back, the signs were all there from the very beginning. They were not flashing neon signs, mind you, nothing quite so obvious, but subtle shifts in the air, a strange kind of dissonance between the perfect picture and the unsettling reality. I met Becky at a friend's gathering, a loud, boisterous affair that usually left me feeling slightly out of place. But then I saw her. She was, without exaggeration, the most beautiful woman I had ever laid eyes upon. Her hair was the color of spun gold, catching the light in a way that seemed almost unnatural, and her eyes were a piercing blue capable of holding your gaze and making you forget where you were or what you were doing. She had a smile that could melt glaciers and a laugh that was infectious, bubbling up from deep within her. Getting to know her felt like stepping into a dream. She was engaging, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. We talked for hours that first night. The noise of the party fading into the background, I was captivated, utterly and completely. We started dating shortly after, and for the first few months, I was walking on air. Every moment with her felt special, charged with an energy I had never experienced before. She introduced me to new places, new experiences, and made me feel like the most important person in the world. But gradually, the cracks began to appear. Little things at first, a sudden mood swing with no apparent cause, a sharp word delivered with a sweet smile, a subtle manipulation to get her own way that I initially excused as simply her knowing what she wanted. She had a remarkable ability to twist situations to make you feel like you were the one in the wrong, even when you were certain you were not. It was a subtle form of control, wrapped in layers of charm and affection. I found myself constantly trying to please her, walking on eggshells at times, fearful of upsetting the delicate balance of her moods. Yet, the beauty remained, the captivating presence. And I was addicted to the highs of our relationship, willing to overlook the increasing lows. It was around 6 months into our relationship that Becky introduced me to Lisa. Lisa was different from Becky. Where Becky was a blazing sun, all bright light and intense energy, Lisa was more like the moon, with a quieter, more introspective presence. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. Becky described Lisa as one of her oldest and dearest friends, and they seemed to share a comfortable, easy rapport. We started spending time together as a trio, going out for dinners, movies, or simply spending evenings at one of our apartments. I found myself enjoying Lisa's company immensely. She was easy to talk to, a good listener, and possessed a dry wit that often had me laughing. There was a warmth to her that I found very appealing, a stark contrast to the sometimes unpredictable nature of my relationship with Becky. Looking back now, knowing what I know, I can see how carefully the stage was set. Becky began to subtly, almost she would make comments about how well we got along, or how similar our interests were. She would sometimes excuse herself from our company for short periods, leaving Lisa and me alone together. It felt natural at the time, not forced, which is, I now understand, the mark of truly effective manipulation. As Becky created these opportunities, Lisa's behavior towards me began to shift as well. She would hold my gaze a little longer than necessary. Her touch would linger when passing something, and her compliments became more personal, more loaded with an unspoken meaning. I am not proud to admit that I was susceptible to this. My relationship with Becky, despite its dazzling facade, was emotionally taxing. The constant need to navigate her moods and manipulations left me feeling insecure and longing for genuine connection. Lisa offered that connection. She seemed to understand me in a way Becky did not, or perhaps chose not to. The temptation grew, a slow, insidious creep into my thoughts. I wrestled with it constantly. I cared about Becky, despite everything, and the idea of betraying her, even just in my mind, filled me with guilt. But Lisa was so easy to be around, so kind, and the pull towards her was undeniable. We started communicating more frequently outside of the times we spent with Becky, sending messages, sharing jokes, talking about our days. It was a dangerous game, and I knew it, but I felt drawn into it, as if by an unseen current. The evening it all came to a head was a Tuesday. Becky had claimed she had to work late, a last-minute project that needed her attention. She suggested I meet up with Lisa for dinner, saying she did not want me to be alone. It seemed like a thoughtful gesture at the time. Lisa and I went to a quiet restaurant, the kind with dim lighting and soft music. The conversation flowed effortlessly, as it always did with her. We talked about our dreams, our fears, the things that truly mattered to us. It felt intimate, deeply personal. After dinner, we walked back towards my apartment, the city lights blurring around us. The air was cool and crisp. We stopped outside my building, neither of us seemingly ready to say goodnight. There was a tension in the air, a palpable sense of anticipation. We stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other. Her eyes were searching mine, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. She reached out and gently touched my arm. "John," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. And then, in that moment, as I leaned towards her, fully prepared to cross a line I knew I should not cross, the front door of my apartment building burst open. Becky stood there, her face a mask of hurt and anger, illuminated by the harsh hallway light. She was not in work clothes. She was dressed as if she had been home all evening. Beside her stood another woman, a mutual friend we sometimes saw at gatherings. Her expression, a mixture of shock and discomfort. "What do you think you are doing, John?" Becky's voice was loud and sharp, cutting through the quiet night. I froze, my blood running cold. Lisa recoiled as if she had been physically struck. The moment was shattered, the intimacy replaced by a harsh, public confrontation. Becky did not wait for me to answer. She launched into a tearful tirade, accusing me of betrayal, of hurting her, of being a liar. The mutual friend stood awkwardly by, clearly uncomfortable, but seemingly there is a witness. I was stunned, unable to form a coherent sentence. Lisa looked equally shocked and mortified. As Becky's accusations reached a crescendo, her voice cracking with feigned emotion, she suddenly stopped, took a deep breath, and her demeanor shifted. The anger seemed to drain away, replaced by a strange, almost calm resignation. "You know what, John?" she said, her voice now quiet, but firm. This is why. This is exactly why." I stared at her, completely lost. "I have been cheating on you, John," she announced, the words hanging in the air like a heavy shroud. "For the past 3 months? With someone I work with?" My world tilted on its axis. I had suspected something was not right, felt the distance growing between us, but I had never imagined this. "I knew I needed to tell you," she continued, her voice gaining a strange confessional quality, "but I did not know how. I did not have the courage. So I engineered this." She gestured between Lisa and me, a wave of her hand encompassing the shattered scene. "I needed you to almost do something, to show me that you were capable of it too, so that I could feel less guilty, so that I could finally come clean." She looked at Lisa, a strange, unreadable expression on her face. Lisa was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and disbelief. "I told Lisa, I suspected you were going to try something," Becky said, her voice flat. "Now, I told her to play along a little, just to see what you would do. I told her I would be nearby, but I did not tell her I was going to do this." "Not exactly." Lisa found her voice, then, her tone laced with disbelief and anger. "You used me, Becky. You set this whole thing up?" Becky did not answer Lisa directly. She turned back to me. Her blue eyes, usually so captivating, now seemed cold and calculating. "So there it is, John. We are both guilty, are we not? Now we can move forward with honesty. Now we can decide what we want to do." The mutual friend slipped away quietly, clearly wanting no further part of the spectacle. I stood there, reeling, the words "I have been cheating on you" echoing in my ears. The near kiss, with Lisa, the public confrontation, Becky's tearful performance, and then the casual confession of her own infidelity. It was a dizzying, sickening sequence of events. In that moment, standing on the pavement outside my apartment building, with Lisa looking as betrayed as I felt, I saw Becky not as the beautiful, captivating woman I had fallen for, but as something else entirely. A manipulator, a strategist, someone who would inflict pain and orchestrate chaos to serve her own ends. And I, in my longing for connection, in my blind spot for her flaws, had walked right into her trap. The first act was complete, a masterpiece of deception that left me wounded and confused. I did not know then that it was only the beginning. A year passed, a blur of days that slowly stitched themselves back together after the unraveling of that night. The immediate aftermath with Becky was swift and painful, as these things often are. There was a brief, futile attempt to salvage something from the wreckage, but the trust was gone, irrevocably broken. Her confession, delivered in such a calculated manner, had stripped away the last vestiges of my idealized image of her. We ended things, and she moved on quickly, as I suspected she would. Lisa and I did not speak for a long time after that night. The awkwardness and the sense of betrayal, on both our parts perhaps, created a chasm between us. I was hurt by her role in Becky's scheme, however manipulated she claimed to have been, and I think she was deeply embarrassed and angry about being used. We drifted out of touch, and I focused on putting the pieces of my own life back together, a process that was slower and more difficult than I had anticipated. The experience left me wary, questioning my own judgment and the sincerity of others. Then, about a year later, I received a message from Lisa. It was unexpected, a simple "Can we talk?" I hesitated for a while. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep the painful memories buried. But another part, a part that still remembered the easy connection we once shared, was curious. I agreed, and we arranged to meet for coffee in a neutral, public place. Seeing her again was strange. She looked different, thinner, with a weariness about her eyes I had not seen before. The initial conversation was stilted, filled with polite but meaningless small talk. Then, she took a deep breath and plunged in. "John," she began, her voice low, "I owe you an apology. A real one, not whatever that was a year ago." I waited, listening. "I was an idiot," she confessed, looking down at her hands, clashed around her coffee cup. "Becky told me she thought you were going to try and kiss me that night, and she wanted me to see it for myself. to prove to me what kind of a person you were. She said she would be there to stop it before anything really happened. I believed her because I trusted her. She was my friend. She paused, a flicker of pain crossing her face. And maybe, she added, her voice barely audible, maybe I was not entirely innocent either. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I was drawn to the attention. It does not matter now. What matters is that I let myself be part of her game, and you got hurt. I nodded slowly. Her explanation of that night aligned with what Becky had claimed, at least the part about Lisa's involvement. It did not excuse it entirely, but it offered a perspective that made her role slightly more understandable, if still regret. But that is not why I contacted you, Lisa continued. Finally, meeting my eyes, there was a raw, vulnerable look in them now. Something else has happened, something that makes that night look like child's play. She took another deep breath, preparing herself. Becky, she said, the name laced with a mixture of anger and hurt. Becky is sleeping with my boyfriend. My eyebrows shot up in surprise. Lisa had been with her boyfriend, Mark, for about 8 months, a relationship that seemed serious and stable from what little I had heard. I found out last week, she explained, her voice trembling slightly. Just a stupid message on his phone. I confronted him, and he confessed. He said it has been going on for a few months. I am so sorry, Lisa, I said, genuinely meaning it. The thought of Becky continuing her patterns of behavior and involving someone close to Lisa was disturbing. But that is not the worst part, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. When I confronted Becky, she did not even try to deny it. She just smiled and she said it has been going on for over a year. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and shocking. Over a year. That meant it had started before that night, before the setup, before her confession to me. My mind raced, replaying the events of that year. Becky's carefully constructed confession, her claim of cheating for only 3 months. It had been another lie, a partial truth designed to explain her actions without revealing the full extent of her deceit. Over a year? I repeated, the implications sinking in. Yes, Lisa confirmed, her eyes filled with a dawning horror, and then she said something else. She said the reason she did that whole thing a year ago with us was not just to confess her cheating to you, it was to create a diversion, to make you think she had only just started cheating, and with someone else entirely. She knew it would hurt you, but she also knew you would eventually move on. It bought her time with Mark, without you ever suspecting it was him. My head spun. The intricate web of manipulation, the sheer audacity of it, was breathtaking. The setup with Lisa, the tearful confession, the timing of it all. It was not a reaction to guilt. It was a calculated move in a long-term game. Becky had not just cheated, she had orchestrated a complex theatrical production to conceal the identity of the person she was truly involved with, a person who was, even then, in Lisa's life. So, Lisa said, her voice hardening, she used me to hurt you and cover her tracks. And now, she is sleeping with my boyfriend, and apparently has been for the entire time she was coming clean to you. The anger that surged through me was cold and sharp. It was not just the betrayal. It was the profound sense of being played, of being a pawn in someone else's cruel game. And it was clear that Becky felt she could get away with anything. We need to expose her, I said, my voice firm. Both of them. Lisa nodded, a flicker of determination in her eyes. We set a trap, I said, a plan already forming in my mind. It needed to be undeniable, something that would leave no room for their lies or manipulations. It needed to be public enough to matter, but controlled enough that we could ensure we caught them red-handed. We spent the next couple of days meticulously planning. Lisa, still having access to Mark's schedule and habits, provided the necessary information. We decided on a time and place, Mark's apartment, an evening when he was supposedly working late. The idea was simple: create a situation where they felt secure and undisturbed, and then reveal their deception to the world, or at least their immediate circle. We arranged for a few trusted friends, mutual acquaintances of both Becky and Mark, to be subtly present or nearby. People who would believe us and spread the word. We needed witnesses. On the chosen evening, I waited outside Mark's apartment building with Lisa. We were both nervous, the air thick with anticipation and a shared sense of purpose. At the agreed-upon time, we went up. Lisa had a key. We opened the door quietly. The scene inside was exactly as we had anticipated and dreaded. Becky and Mark were there, comfortable and oblivious. They looked up, startled, their expressions morphing from relaxed intimacy to shock and panic as they saw us standing in the doorway. "What are you doing here?" Mark stammered, scrambling to cover himself. Becky, ever the strategist, recovered faster. Her face hardened, and a defiant look came into her eyes. "What is this? John, Lisa, spying on us? Spying?" Lisa's voice was laced with pain and fury. "You have been sleeping with him for over a year." "Becky, over a year. While you were pretending to confess to John, you were already with him." Becky's composure wavered for just a second, but then she regained it, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. So what? She said, her voice cold. Yes, I was. And it is not like you two were angels that night, were you? She glanced pointedly at me and Lisa. It was then that the twist, a final sickening layer of Becky's plan, became clear. It was not just about concealing her affair with Mark. It was about justifying it, about creating a narrative where everyone was equally culpable, equally dirty. Her setup with Lisa and me was not just a diversion, it was ammunition. Ammunition she could use if her relationship with Mark was ever discovered, to muddy the waters and deflect blame. She had planned for this possibility, for the chance that her secret might be exposed, and she had ensured she had a way to strike back, to claim moral equivalence. You planned this whole thing, I said, my voice flat with the weight of the realization. That night, the confession, it was all just so you could point back to it if this ever came out. Becky did not confirm it, but her silence, and the almost imperceptible shift in her expression, confirmed everything. Mark stood beside her, pale and silent, a picture of guilt. The witnesses we had arranged were arriving, their murmurs from the doorway confirming their presence. The confrontation that followed was messy, painful, and ultimately, revealing. There were accusations, denials, and a slow, grudging trickle of truth extracted from Mark, under pressure from Lisa. It confirmed what Becky had already admitted. Their relationship had begun well before that night, and Becky's elaborate scheme had been designed to protect it. Standing there, watching the scene unfold, I felt a strange sense of closure, not just on Becky, but on the naive version of myself who had been so easily fooled. I had been manipulated, yes, but I had also allowed myself to be blinded by beauty and a desperate desire for connection. The twist was not just that Becky had been cheating for longer, or with Mark from the start. The real twist was the depth of her calculated cruelty, her willingness to hurt and use others, including her supposed friend, to safeguard her own secrets and create a shield of false reciprocity. It was a chilling demonstration of how far some people will go to avoid taking responsibility for their actions, how they will rewrite reality and sacrifice others on the altar of their own self-preservation. The trap had worked, exposing the truth, but the truth was uglier and more complex than I could have ever imagined.